Hello once again everyone and welcome back to the Zettel, where I am joined by someone else for once. It's Jacob who's going to be helping me out today. And we're going to now move on from the here's how to cut the Schielhau to now here actual Schielhau actions. So, the idea for the Schielhau is that in this context this is how it kills an Ober, because as we all know, all of the Meisterhau, save for one, kill an Ober. So the idea is going to be I can use this in three main ways. There is the stupid Oberhau, which is basically my immediate, kind of indes, but indes leaning toward forward response. And then later we'll get into the idea of ansetzen. This is very much a setting on against him. There will be later the idea of he is cutting at me, so I'm doing this as a counter stroke. And then there is finally the idea of he is seeing what's happening and attempting to move beyond, but will not have advantage because of it. So, firstly let's talk about the ansetzen idea. That's going to be, I could be at the shoulder, he could also be at the shoulder for this matter, but either way this is the stereotypical Wuffel, or also just someone who's being particularly foolish. He's drawing back to cut, which gives me opportunity to cast myself forward. Now, as I find myself at the shoulder in a cutting guard when he draws back, just cutting a Zorn, even a particularly good Zorn, won't necessarily do me much good because I have to go so deep and I'm coming with a cut rather than a thrust, meaning that when he deals with that point, it is more likely that I will then have to cut again. That gives him time. Versus if I instead use a thrust, I will be able to stay on his blade and either close into wrestling where he's still dealing with my point, or I will be able to stab him. Again, we'll cover this when we get to the ansetzen section, but go ahead and put it in your brain. So, he draws back to cut, casts that out forward, and this as a point is a lot harder for him to deal with. And I want to cast this nice and clear right up to the front of him. Out. This also means that should he try and bring that cut back down that line, I've still got this. At worst, what just happened is going to happen where I end up here. That's literally every thumb grip technique you could possibly want to do. At best, if he tries to parry it, we'll still be in the middle of the blade. I can just turn over and wind from the outside. So, that's how you deal with someone who's rearing back. And this works in all contexts. The stereotypical one you'll see is when someone rears back over their head. Certainly in that regard, this same cast is a pretty dang good one. The biggest thing you want to make out for, though, is after you stick, get used to pulling that tip back out of them. Since our swords don't go through people anymore, you'll need to make that cut. Now then, the next motion we shall do is instead of firing, actually let's show that real quick the other way. One more step back. Perfect. Okay, we're here. Out. Just nice and strong to the throat. I'm totally safe from what you may wish to do. And it should be noted, you can play around a little bit with your footwork here, and I'm going to do a separate video talking about this, but rather than stepping next to the squinter, like I mentioned the first time I went over it, this is much more of a direct step, or even given that we're in absence of action from him, this could be slightly cross step. So I'm going more toward his left foot, toward his right foot as opposed to his left foot. I'll talk more about that in a separate thing, but this would be a place to put it in. Anywho though, next action. So this is going to be the idea of he is cutting first at me. So just for clarification, what this is like all the Meisterhau. If I'm dealing with an Ober as a counter strike, I'm using geometry of my blade to get around the basic of his. So if we just both cut Obers, right? Even if I was doing a good Zorn, there's still a decent chance we end up just here. And he completes that cut, we're in a bind. Not the end of the world, but I don't get to hit him immediately. We both get to work. The Schiel tumbles, like I said. Very similar to the way this Zwerchhau can deal with an Ober, but just a little bit different in regards to how it's going to extend. The best way to think about a Schielhau is it is the inverted Zorn, right? So if my Zorn would be straight in that line, my Schiel is going to tumble over, and what happens is, go ahead and hold your sword out. As they interact in the cut, the short edge hitting first ensures that the bind point happens basically exactly the same, but I get an extra inch or so of it turning over, and even if I don't, the tip will still go over because my strong will be in the way and in the meat of my hand. That's what makes this work so well. So, he's casting an Ober, and I'm casting a Schiel that looked like an Ober until the last minute, and that sticks it in his head. I will say that when you do it as a counter against a cut, it also has the high chance of landing as a cut. Sometimes you get it as a thrust, sometimes you get it as a cut. It's 6.5 dozen. Just kind of depends upon how extended your tip got. The more you delay, the more likely it's going to turn into a cut. The more you're on it and casting it out, the more likely it's going to turn into a thrust. So here's that again. He's obering, and I'm shieling. I step to the side of it like always, and I got my tip on presence. Let's change sides. Hold on. There you go. Gotta make sure we're on camera. That one ended up as a cut because I stepped a little bit tighter. Not the end of the world. It hits exactly the same. One more. There we go. That one turned into a thrust. And as you see, my hands are perfectly fine because all the interaction is happening out here. I'm not catching it on my guard. You don't want to do that. That's how you're going to get your fingers smashed at the very least. But if it's out here, by the time it comes anywhere near your cross guard, you are totally safe. Now, the final context that we go over in regards to the Oberhau is what happens if he is cutting an Oberhau, or a Zorn for that matter, sees that I am using the Schiel, which, to be fair, with a little bit of practice, it's easy to see this coming. He is then going to attempt to Durchwechseln. Now, this is generally not necessarily a great idea, but if someone is over-committing, especially on the thumb grip, if they're turning this less as an extension and much more as a chop, this Durchwechseln gets a great opening there. In fact, let's show that real quick. So we're going to slow things down a little bit because Jacob's going to hit me. But he's cutting the Ober, and rather than casting this out nicely, I am cutting with the short edge more toward his blade. That leads to then, he has a huge gap to go through and can stick this pretty easily. Do I know for a fact if this is what they were anticipating? No. But if I've ever seen this work, it's been in that context. If someone's putting way too much lateral into their shield, or they're being too close, fencing short, as we'll talk about again next week, and that's allowing him to strike. So, either way though, because I am extended, I don't necessarily have to worry about this, and we'll go through this slow, because this is a bunch of moving parts. He's obering, I'm shieling, he Durchwechseln through, I'm going to just follow and turn over. Now, I got cross guard lock, I'll fix that on the next one, but the basic idea is this is long point. This is long point, this is also long point. He tries to go underneath, just follow him and you're going to be a-okay. Since my thumb's already on the blade, it's best for me to go ahead and turn fully over into ox, because might as well to get my edge involved. Here's again, he's obering here, and again I got that cross guard lock because I'm stepping forward a little too soon, but it's 6 1/2 dozen really. I'm even safe doing this with just the pure flat, but it'd be good if I can get that turn. Let's switch sides and see if I maybe somehow get lucky looking at the other wall. So, he's obering, I'm shielding. Let's try that again, a little bit further back. There we go, that's the one I wanted. Yeah. Nice and simple. Let's go one more just for funsies. And that may also happen, wherein you get connectivity, but he's far enough back. The mistake would be to wait for this action. You should turn in and chase because you have your blade set upon him. One more thing I want to talk about, and this is a brief one. We'll get to it more next time. But there is also the idea of him abandoning his Ober, less in favor of a Durchwechseln, but more in favor of a parry. I do want to show this somewhat briefly, because while it comes up with the flute counter a lot, this is where I find it happens more. The idea is going to be, rather than just finishing his cut, or Durchwechseln, he's going to take his cut and transfer it over into a parry. Now because of this, and the grip I end up in, you can come around and cut him, but there is a sweeter option, so let's just link back to what we've been learning so far. Against middling force, if you're winning, you find him weak, stab. If he tries to go around, keep the middle, stab. If he tries to be strong in your blade, wind. In this case, we can't wind through him, we'll wind around him. So here is that idea. We'll go through it kind of slow. He's cutting, he turns it into a parry. Now I get the choice. My wind around could be as a thrust, or especially with this, that's a great opportunity for a duplier. You'll have to step a lot tighter to make it land because of the nature of extension, but it's a really sweet shot. I find usually if I do this, I tend to clip an elbow instead of the face, but in a perfect world, you can definitely get face. So here's that again. He's obering, I'm shielding. He turns it in. There's a good thrust, or alternately, there's a good cut. And it's the exact same sort of idea like what we did with the Sverkau, and like what we did with the Krumpau, and like what we did with the Zornhau. It's almost like this, just as the same thing over and over again. Either way though, thank you very much, Jacob. And thank you all very much for watching. That is the Schielhau against Obers, with a little bit of extra bonus. Next week we'll talk about Flug, killing Flug, and then also a little bit about dealing with the thrust from low, and how you usually see this when you watch footage of tournaments. Either way, though, thank you all very much. We'll go over some other techniques another time.